One letter came from a young woman in another state. She wrote, "I was working at a restaurant where the manager was stealing our tips. I was afraid to say anything because I needed the job. But after I saw your story, I realized I had to speak up. I reported it to the labor board. They investigated. The manager was fired. We got our money back. Thank you for showing me that one person can make a difference." Sarah kept that letter on her desk at work. It reminded her why she became a detective, not just to catch criminals, but to help people, to stand up for people who could not stand up for themselves, to use her skills and knowledge to make things better. The police academy did make her case a training example. New officers learned about it in their classes. Instructors used it to teach about professionalism and using proper channels. They taught that law enforcement officers should conduct themselves properly, even when off duty. That they should document evidence. That they should work through systems instead of taking matters into their own hands. Sarah was asked to give talks at the academy several times. She told the new officers the same thing each time. You have skills and knowledge that most people don't have. You know how systems work. You know how to gather evidence. You know how to build cases. You can use those skills even in everyday situations. When you see something wrong, you can do something about it, not by being aggressive or showing off your badge, but by being smart, by documenting, by using proper channels. That's what good police work is. The story continued to live online. People still shared it, still talked about it. It became one of those internet stories that people referenced. When someone complained about bad service online, other people would comment, "Pull a Detective Kim on them," or "Time for some cold food revenge." Sarah sometimes wondered what would have happened if she had just left the restaurant that day, if she had just thrown away the cold food and driven away angry. Maybe nothing would have changed. Maybe Robert Chen would still be running his restaurants badly. Maybe workers would still be getting cheated. Maybe customers would still be getting cold food and rude service. But she had not left. She had stayed. She had investigated. She had taken action. And because of that, things were better. Not perfect, but better. Dozens of workers had gotten justice. Hundreds of customers were now getting better service. Thousands of people had been inspired to stand up for themselves, all from one cold burger. Sarah thought about this sometimes when she faced difficult decisions at work, when cases seemed too small to matter, when problems seemed too big to solve. She remembered that sometimes the smallest action can create the biggest change, that one person really can make a difference, that justice is not just about big cases and major criminals. Sometimes justice is about cold food and rude managers. Sometimes justice is about standing up for what is right even when it seems small. 6 months after the incident, Sarah received a call from the State Attorney General's office. Robert Chen had been formally charged with multiple counts of wage theft, fraud, and labor law violations. The evidence was overwhelming. He would likely face jail time and substantial fines. His 5 restaurants had been sold to new owners who ran them properly. His reputation was destroyed. He would never own a restaurant again. The attorney told Sarah, "Your initial investigation and documentation was crucial to this case. Without your detailed notes and evidence from that first day, we might not have had enough to build our case." "You did excellent work, Detective," Sarah thanked him. But inside she was thinking about the employees, about Grace and the others who had been mistreated. They were the real winners here. They had their dignity back. They had their money back. They had jobs they could be proud of. 1 year after the incident, Sarah was back in the area for another case. It was lunchtime. She was hungry. Without thinking about it, she drove to the same restaurant. It had become her regular spot when she was in that part of town. She walked in and Grace was there, managing the lunch rush. When Grace saw Sarah, her face lit up. "Detective Kim, great to see you." "Hi, Grace," Sarah said with a smile. "How's everything going?" "Wonderful," Grace said. "We just got rated the best location in the region by corporate. Our customer satisfaction scores are the highest in the company, and I'm training to become a district manager." Sarah felt genuinely happy for her. "That's fantastic. You deserve it." "I really do," Grace said with confidence. "And I work for it. But I also got the chance because of what happened. Because someone decided that people deserve to be treated right. Both customers and workers." Sarah ordered her usual meal. This time she did not have to wait long. The food came quickly. It was hot. It was fresh. It was perfect. She sat in her favorite booth and ate while reviewing case files on her laptop. Around her, The restaurant was full of happy customers. Employees worked efficiently and seemed content. Managers treated everyone with respect. The system was working the way it should. Sarah finished her meal and threw away her trash. As she walked to the door, she glanced at the framed news article on the wall. It was still there, her face looking back at her from a year ago. A reminder of what had happened. A reminder of what one person could do. She walked to her car and drove away. She had other cases to work on, other investigations to conduct, other problems to solve. That was her job. That was what she did. But sometimes when things got difficult, when cases seemed impossible, when she felt tired and frustrated, she thought about the cold burger. She thought about how something so small had turned into something so big. She thought about Grace and the other employees who had gotten justice. She thought about all the customers who were now treated better, and she smiled, because she had learned something important that day. Justice is not just about major crimes and big cases. Justice is also about the small things, about treating people right, about standing up when something is wrong, about doing what you can with the skills you have. Sarah was a detective. She investigated problems. She gathered evidence. She built cases. She got results. Sometimes those cases involved major criminals and millions of dollars. Sometimes those cases involved cold burgers and rude managers. But they all mattered. They all made a difference. They all made the world a little bit better, and that was enough. That was everything. The cold food revenge had been served, and it had been satisfying in every way. Her captain called her into his office. Sarah thought she might be in trouble for getting involved in something outside her jurisdiction, but when she walked in, the captain was smiling. "Detective Kim," he said, "I've been a cop for 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. You took a personal situation and turned it into a massive investigation that's helping hundreds of people. The employees who were being cheated, the customers who were being served unsafe food. You did this on your lunch break." Sarah felt embarrassed. "I just did what seemed right." "No," the captain said. "You did what a great detective does. You saw a problem. You gathered evidence. You worked through proper channels. You built a case, and you got results. This is going to be a training example at the academy. How law enforcement officers should conduct themselves even when off duty." The captain handed her a letter. "This is a commendation. It's going in your file. Good work, detective." Sarah took the letter. She felt proud but also a little overwhelmed. She had not expected this to become so big. She had just wanted hot food. Over the next few weeks, the story continued to develop. Robert Chen tried to fight the franchise termination in court but lost. He was forced to sell all 5 locations. New owners took over with strict oversight from corporate. The restaurants were completely cleaned and renovated. New managers were hired. New training programs were implemented. Derek applied for jobs at other restaurants but kept getting rejected. His name was associated with the viral video. Nobody wanted to hire him. He eventually moved to another city to start over. The employees who filed lawsuits reached settlements. They received back pay for all the hours they had worked. Some received additional compensation for the hostile treatment. The legal costs came out of Robert Chen's personal assets. The health department changed their inspection policies. They increased the frequency of surprise inspections. They created a hotline for employees to report violations anonymously. They published inspection results online so customers could see which restaurants were safe. And Sarah became something of a local hero. People recognized her when she went out. They thanked her. They told her their own stories about bad experiences with businesses. Some were inspired to file their own complaints about places that had mistreated them. Sarah remained humble through it all. She told everyone the same thing. "I'm not special. Anyone could have done what I did. You just have to decide that you're not going to accept being treated badly. You have to decide to take action instead of just complaining, and you have to use the systems that exist to hold people accountable." That's all I did, but it was not all she did. She had turned one moment of frustration into systematic change. She had helped workers get justice. She had helped make restaurants safer. She had shown that one person really can make a difference, all because she ordered a burger and it was cold, all because a manager was rude to her, all because she decided to do something about it instead of just walking away. The cold food had turned into cold revenge, and it was served perfectly. 3 months after the incident, Sarah drove past the restaurant again. It looked completely different. The building had been repainted. New signs hung outside. The parking lot was full of cars. She could see through the windows that it was busy with customers who looked happy. She decided to go inside. She was curious to see what had changed. When she walked through the door, the difference was immediate. The restaurant felt cleaner and brighter. New tables and chairs had replaced the old worn ones. The floor tiles were new. Fresh paint covered the walls. Everything looked cared for. Sarah walked to the counter. A young man stood at the register. He was wearing a clean-pressed uniform. When he saw Sarah, he smiled. It was a genuine smile, not a fake customer service smile. "Welcome," he said warmly. "What can I get for you today?" "I'll have the premium burger meal, please," Sarah said. "Medium size." "Excellent choice," the young man said. He entered the order into the system. "That'll be $12.47. Sarah handed him her card. While he processed the payment, she looked around. The employees working in the kitchen looked different from before. They were smiling. They were talking to each other in friendly voices. They looked like people who wanted to be there. "Your order will be ready in just a few minutes," the young man said as he handed back her card and receipt. "Please have a seat anywhere you like. We'll call your number." "Thank you," Sarah said. She took her receipt. Number 42. She chose a booth near the window. While she waited, she watched the operation. A manager was walking around checking on customers. When she saw a family with small children, she brought them extra napkins without being asked. When an elderly man looked confused at the self-serve drink station, she helped him. This manager was completely different from Derek. She cared about customers. She wanted them to be happy. After just 5 minutes, Sarah's number was called. She walked to the counter. A different employee handed her a tray with a smile. "Here you go, fresh and hot. Enjoy your meal." Sarah took the tray back to her booth. She opened the bag slowly. Steam came out, good sign. She pulled out the burger and unwrapped it. The bun was soft but not soggy. She touched the patty. It was hot. Actually hot. She picked up a fry. It was crispy on the outside, soft on the inside, perfect. She took a bite of the burger. It was delicious. It was exactly what a fast food burger should be. Hot, fresh, made properly. She took a sip of her cola. It was cold and fizzy. Everything was right. While she ate, the manager approached her table. The woman looked nervous but determined. She was wearing a name tag that said Manager Grace Park. "Excuse me," Grace said. "Are you Detective Kim?" Sarah looked up. "Yes, I am," Grace smiled. "I thought so. I recognized you from the news. I'm the new manager here. I wanted to introduce myself and thank you." "Thank you for what?" Sarah asked. Grace sat down at the booth across from Sarah. "For what you did. I was working at one of the other locations owned by Mr. Chen. I was one of the employees who was being cheated. I worked hours I didn't get paid for. I was treated badly. I wanted to quit, but I needed the job. I have 2 kids to support." Sarah listened quietly. "When your story came out, everything changed," Grace continued. "The investigation started. Corporate came in. We finally had a chance to speak up without being afraid. I got my back pay. I got an apology. And when the new owners took over, they promoted me to manager. They said they wanted people who had been through the old system to help build the new one." Grace's eyes got a little wet. "I have a good job now. I get paid fairly. I'm treated with respect. My kids have a stable home. That's because of you. Because you didn't just walk away when you got bad service. You did something about it." Sarah felt emotional but kept her composure. "I'm glad things worked out for you. But you helped yourself too. You spoke up when you had the chance. You stood up for yourself. That takes courage." Grace wiped her eyes. "Still, you started it. You were the first domino. Everything else fell because you pushed that first one. A lot of us are grateful. We wanted you to know." Grace stood up. "Your meal today is on the house. It's the least we can do." Sarah shook her head. "No, thank you. I appreciate it, but I want to pay. I just wanted what I paid for in the first place. Hot food and good service. That's all I ever wanted." Grace smiled. "You got it today. And you'll get it every time you come here from now on. I promise you that." Grace went back to work. Sarah finished her meal. It was the best burger she had eaten in a long time. Not because it was anything special, but because it was made right, by people who cared, in a place that was run properly. When Sarah left the restaurant, she noticed something on the wall near the door. It was a framed newspaper article. The headline read, "Detective Turns Cold Meal into Restaurant Reform." Below the headline was the picture of Sarah from the news segment. Below the picture was a small plaque. It said, "In appreciation for holding us accountable and helping us become better. Thank you, Detective Kim." Sarah stood there for a moment looking at it. She felt strange seeing her face on the wall. But she also felt satisfied. What she had done mattered. It had helped people. It had made things better. Over the following months, Sarah noticed changes beyond just that one restaurant. Other businesses in the area became more careful, more professional, more respectful of customers and employees. The news story had created a ripple effect. Nobody wanted to be the next viral villain. Nobody wanted to be the next cold food revenge story. Sarah received letters from people all over the country, people who had seen the story online. They told her their own stories about standing up to bad businesses, about filing complaints, about demanding better treatment. Her story had inspired them to take action instead of just accepting poor treatment. The first customer was happy to talk. "The service here is terrible. I've complained before. Nothing ever changes." The second customer was the father who had the pickles problem. "They refused to fix my order. Just told me to pick off what I didn't want. That's not how restaurants should work." One of the construction workers agreed to talk. "I eat here sometimes because it's close to work. But the food is usually cold or wrong. The manager is rude. I've seen him yell at customers and employees." Every customer had a similar story. Bad service, cold food, rude management. It was a pattern. Jessica's cameraman recorded everything. Then Jessica turned to Sarah. "Detective Kim, can you tell us what happened here today?" The camera focused on Sarah. She looked calm and professional. She explained everything clearly. How she ordered food. How it was cold. How the manager refused to help. How she decided to investigate. How she found patterns of violations and complaints. How she contacted authorities. "I'm a detective," Sarah said to the camera. "I investigate problems. That's my job. When I saw how this manager treated me and other customers, I knew there was something wrong. When I looked deeper, I found much bigger problems. Problems that affect workers and customers." Jessica asked, "What do you want people to know?" Sarah thought for a moment. "I want people to know that they have rights. Customers have the right to safe food and good service. Workers have the right to fair treatment and legal wages. When businesses violate those rights, there are systems in place to hold them accountable. But someone has to speak up. Someone has to take action. Today that someone was me." The news segment aired that evening. Jessica and her team worked fast. They edited the interviews and footage and put together a complete story. The segment was 5 minutes long. It showed Sarah explaining what happened. It showed other customers sharing their bad experiences. It showed the health inspector's car in the parking lot. It showed the chaos inside the restaurant. The segment ended with Jessica speaking directly to the camera. "This is a story about one person who refused to accept bad service." Detective Sarah Kim turned a cold burger into a full investigation that exposed serious problems. This restaurant is now under review by health inspectors, corporate investigators, and possibly federal authorities, all because one customer decided to do something instead of just walking away angry. The segment was posted online immediately after it aired. Within an hour, it had 5,000 views. Within 3 hours, it had 50,000 views. By the next morning, it had 500,000 views. People shared it on social media. They commented. They told their own stories about bad restaurants. They praised Sarah for taking action. The hashtag started on social media. Someone created it and it spread fast. People started using hashtag #ColdFoodRevenge when they shared the video. The phrase caught on. It became a trending topic in the city. Then it spread to other cities. People loved the story. A detective who used her skills to fight back against a rude restaurant manager. It was like a movie, except it was real. But while the internet was celebrating, real consequences were happening at the restaurant and for Robert Chen. The morning after the news segment aired, Robert Chen himself showed up at the restaurant. He was a man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit. He drove a luxury car. He looked angry when he got out of the car and walked toward the restaurant. Inside, he found Derek, Linda Choi from corporate, and 2 other corporate representatives. They were waiting for him. Robert tried to take control of the meeting immediately. "This is ridiculous," Robert said. "One customer complains and suddenly everyone is investigating me?" Linda looked at him coldly. "Mr. Chen, this is not about one customer. This is about patterns of violations across all 5 of your locations. We've now inspected all 5. 4 of them had critical health code violations. 3 of them had employees willing to testify about unpaid wages and hostile treatment. This is systematic. Robert's face turned red. Those employees are lying. They're just unhappy they got fired. They weren't fired, Linda said. They quit because of the working conditions. And we've verified their claims. We have time card records that don't match our logs. We have testimony from multiple employees at multiple locations. We have documentation of health violations that were reported and ignored. Another corporate representative spoke up. Mr. Chen, you violated your franchise agreement in multiple ways. You failed to maintain health standards. You failed to properly train staff. You failed to address customer complaints. You created a hostile work environment. These are serious breaches of contract, Robert tried to argue. He tried to make excuses. He tried to blame Derek and other managers. But Linda and her team had done their investigation. They had evidence. They had witness statements. They had documentation. Robert could not talk his way out of this. What happens now? Robert asked. His voice was quieter now, less confident. Fast Bite Corporate is terminating your franchise agreements, Linda said. All 5 of them. You have 90 days to close these locations or sell them to qualified buyers. You will also face a substantial fine for breach of contract. And if the employees' lawsuits go forward, that's a separate legal matter. Robert looked shocked. His face went from red to pale. You can't do this. These restaurants are my livelihood. You should have thought about that before you violated health codes and labor laws, Linda said. This meeting is over. You'll receive formal notification in writing within 48 hours. Linda and her team left. Robert stood there in the empty restaurant. All the employees had been sent home. The restaurant was closed temporarily for deep cleaning and repairs. Robert looked around at the empty tables and chairs. His empire was crumbling. Outside in the parking lot, Derek was clearing out his personal items from his car. He had been fired immediately. Linda had terminated him as soon as she finished reviewing the evidence. Derek had violated company policies repeatedly. He had mistreated customers and employees. He had failed to follow health standards. There was no way to keep him. Derek loaded a box of his belongings into his car. A few people in the parking lot recognized him from the news segment. They stared at him. Some took pictures. Derek kept his head down and got in his car quickly. He drove away and did not look back. Inside the restaurant, the young employee who had been crying on the day Sarah visited was talking to a lawyer. Several employees had been contacted by lawyers who wanted to help them file proper complaints about wage theft and mistreatment. The lawyer was explaining their rights and options. You don't have to be afraid anymore, the lawyer told the young woman. What they did to you was illegal. You have the right to fight back. The young woman was nervous but hopeful. Will I get my money back? They made me work hours they didn't pay for. We'll fight for every penny you're owed, the lawyer promised, and we'll make sure they face consequences for what they did. The same conversation was happening with employees from all 5 locations. Word had spread. Workers who had been afraid to speak up before were now coming forward. They were telling their stories. They were demanding justice. The health department conducted follow-up inspections at all 5 locations. 2 of them were closed immediately for critical violations. The other 3 were given strict deadlines to make corrections or face closure. The city health department issued a public statement saying they would be increasing random inspections at all fast food restaurants in the area. The labor board opened formal investigations into Robert Chen's business practices. They interviewed dozens of employees. They reviewed thousands of time cards and payment records. They found evidence of systematic wage theft. Employees worked off the clock. Employees had breaks cut short. Employees were paid for fewer hours than they actually worked. The evidence was clear and overwhelming. The state attorney general's office announced they were also investigating consumer protection violations, fraud, deceptive business practices. Robert Chen was facing legal action from multiple directions, and the FBI's white-collar crime division opened their own inquiry. Agent Michael Lee and his team looked at Robert Chen's financial records. They found that the money saved from wage theft and cutting corners on food safety went straight into Robert Chen's pocket. He had been getting rich while his employees suffered and his customers got sick or cold food. But the biggest impact was on public opinion. The story had gone viral. News stations in other cities picked it up. National news websites wrote articles about it. People everywhere were talking about the detective who turned a cold burger into justice. Restaurants across the city became more careful. Managers became more polite. Employees were treated better. Nobody wanted to be the next viral story. Nobody wanted to be the next cold food revenge case. Sarah's phone would not stop ringing. News reporters wanted interviews. Other law enforcement agencies wanted to know how she did it. Citizens wanted to thank her. Her police department received dozens of calls praising her. Agent Michael Lee listened carefully as Sarah explained the situation. She told him about Robert Chen and his 5 restaurant locations. She told him about the lawsuits from employees claiming wage theft. She told him about the pattern of problems across all the locations. She told him about managers who seemed to follow orders to ignore problems. "Why are you calling me about this?" Michael asked. "This sounds like a local health department issue." "Because I think it's bigger than that," Sarah said. "Wage theft across multiple locations. Systematic violations. A pattern of threatening employees who complain. If Chen is doing this at all 5 locations, he might be doing it deliberately to save money. That could be fraud. That could be your area." Michael was quiet for a moment. Sarah could hear him typing on a keyboard. "Let me look something up," he said. Sarah waited. She watched Derek at the counter. He was yelling at the young employee who had been crying earlier. Sarah could not hear what he was saying, but his body language was aggressive. He was pointing his finger at the girl. The girl's shoulders were hunched. She looked scared. "Sarah, this is interesting," Michael said. "We've actually been looking at franchise operations that exploit workers. There's a task force working on it. Let me forward your information to them. Can you send me everything you have?" "Yes," Sarah said. "I'll email it all to you." "Good," Michael said. "And Sarah? Good catch. A lot of people would have just left angry. You turned it into an investigation." Sarah smiled. "That's what I do." She hung up and started writing an email to Michael. She attached the photos of the cold food. She attached pictures of the health violations she had witnessed. She attached links to the news articles about the lawsuits. She attached the business license information. She wrote a detailed summary of everything she had observed and learned. Then she sent it. Sarah looked at the time. She had been in the restaurant for almost 2 hours now. Her lunch break was long over. She should call her partner and tell him she would be late getting back. But something told her to stay a little longer. Something told her the dominoes were about to start falling. She was right. 15 minutes later, a woman in a business suit walked through the restaurant door. She was carrying a briefcase and a clipboard. She looked around the restaurant with a serious expression. Then she walked straight to the counter. "I need to speak with the manager," the woman said in a loud, clear voice. The cashier looked nervous. Derek? Someone's here for you." Derek came out from the back office. He saw the woman and his expression changed. He looked confused and a little worried. "Can I help you?" Derek asked. The woman pulled out a badge from her pocket. "I'm Inspector Chen from the City Health Department. I'm here to conduct a surprise inspection." Derek's face went pale. All the color drained from his cheeks. "Right now? We didn't get a call." "That's why it's called a surprise inspection," the inspector said. Her voice was firm but professional. "I need access to your kitchen, your storage areas, and all food handling areas. I also need to see your temperature logs and employee training records." Derek looked panicked. "Can we schedule this for another day? We're really busy right now." Inspector Chen looked around the restaurant. There were maybe 10 customers total. "It was not busy at all, no," she said simply. "The inspection happens now. Please take me to the kitchen." Derek had no choice. He led the inspector toward the kitchen area. Sarah watched them go. She felt a small sense of satisfaction. The first domino had fallen. For the next 45 minutes, Sarah watched the inspection happen. She could not see everything, but she could see enough. Inspector Chen walked through the kitchen with her clipboard. She checked refrigerators. She checked food temperatures with a thermometer. She looked at storage areas. She talked to employees. Derek followed her around looking more and more worried. The inspector checked the hand-washing stations. She watched employees to see if they washed their hands properly. She checked dates on food containers. She checked the cleanliness of surfaces and equipment. She wrote many things on her clipboard. Some of the customers noticed something was happening. They whispered to each other. Some looked worried. One family quickly finished eating and left. Sarah took notes on everything. She documented the time the inspector arrived. She documented how long the inspection took. She documented Derek's reactions. All of this might be useful later. Finally, Inspector Chen finished. She walked back to the counter with Derek following her. She pulled out some papers from her briefcase. "Mr. Wilson," she said. Derek's last name was Wilson. Sarah wrote that down. "I've found multiple critical violations. Food stored at improper temperatures. No proper hand-washing procedures being followed. Expired food in your refrigerators. Equipment not cleaned properly. These are serious issues," Derek tried to argue. "Those can't be right. We follow all the rules." Inspector Chen showed him her clipboard. "These are facts, not opinions. I've documented everything with photos and temperature readings. You're receiving a formal notice of violation. You have 24 hours to correct these issues or this location will be closed." Derek looked shocked. "Closed? You can't close us down." "I can and I will if these violations are not fixed," Inspector Chen said. She handed him the papers. "You'll also receive a formal fine. Someone from our office will return tomorrow to verify corrections. Do you understand?" Derek took the papers. His hands were shaking slightly. "Yes," he said quietly. Inspector Chen looked around at the employees. "I also need to speak with your employees privately. Is there an office or break room?" Derek looked like he wanted to say no, but he could not refuse. "There's an office in the back," he said. Inspector Chen nodded. She looked at the employees. "I need to speak with each of you individually. This is about working conditions and safety. You will not get in trouble for talking to me honestly." One by one, the employees went to the back office with Inspector Chen. Sarah wished she could hear what they were saying, but she could guess. The employees probably told her about Derek's behavior, about being forced to work without proper breaks, about being yelled at, about feeling scared. Each employee came out of the office looking relieved, like they had been carrying something heavy and finally put it down. While the inspections were happening, something else occurred. A woman walked into the restaurant. She was wearing an expensive business suit. She had a leather bag and an iPad. She looked very professional and very serious. She walked straight to Derek. "Are you Derek Wilson, the manager of this location?" Derek was dealing with too many problems at once. He looked overwhelmed. "Yes, who are you?" "My name is Linda Choi. I'm from Fast Bite Corporate Headquarters. I'm here to conduct a franchise compliance review." Derek's eyes went wide. "What, today?" "Yes, today," Linda said. "We received some serious complaints about this location and others owned by your franchise operator. I need to review your operations, your records, and speak with your staff." Derek looked like he might faint. "This is too much. I can't deal with all this at once." "You don't have a choice," Linda said. Her voice was cold. "This is not optional. Where is your office?" Derek pointed to the back. Linda walked toward the office without waiting for him. Derek hurried after her. Sarah watched all of this and felt amazed. Her phone calls had worked. The health inspector was here. Corporate was here. Everything was happening at once. The dominoes were falling faster than she expected, but she was not done. She had called Jessica at the newspaper. Jessica should be arriving soon with a camera crew. That would be the next domino. Sarah stood up and walked to the counter. The cashier who had been rude to her earlier was still there, but now the cashier looked very different. She looked scared and nervous. All the attitude was gone. "Excuse me," Sarah said politely. "I'm still here." The cashier looked at her. "Oh, do you need something?" "No," Sarah said. "I just wanted you to see that I'm still here, watching." The cashier's face turned red. She looked away. She knew something was wrong. She knew this customer was somehow connected to everything happening, but she did not know how. Sarah returned to her booth. She sat down and waited. Her cold food was still on the table. She had not thrown it away. It was evidence of where this all started. One cold burger, one rude manager, one mistake of being rude to the wrong person. 20 minutes later, Jessica arrived. She brought a cameraman with her. They walked into the restaurant and looked around. Jessica saw Sarah and walked over. "Is this the place?" Jessica asked. "This is it," Sarah confirmed. Jessica looked around at the chaos. The health inspector was still there. The corporate investigator was in the back office. Employees looked stressed. Derek looked like he was having the worst day of his life. "Wow," Jessica said. "You really kicked the hornet's nest. I just wanted hot food, Sarah said with a small smile. Jessica laughed. Then she became professional. Okay, we're going to interview some customers. Can we interview you? Yes, Sarah said. But let me tell you exactly what to ask. Sarah spent 5 minutes briefing Jessica on everything that happened. Jessica took notes. The cameraman set up his equipment. Then they started interviewing customers who were leaving the restaurant. Sarah put her phone down on the table. She looked at the cold food in front of her. Then she looked around the restaurant with different eyes. She was not looking as a customer anymore. She was looking as a detective. And when a detective looks at something, they see details that other people miss. She watched the kitchen area. One of the workers, a young woman who looked about 18, was working at the burger station. The girl's eyes were red. She had been crying. Sarah could tell from the way she kept wiping her face with her sleeve. But the girl kept working. She kept making burgers even though she was clearly upset. Nobody checked on her. Nobody asked if she was okay. Sarah watched Derek. He was leaning against the counter now, looking at his phone. A customer walked up to order. Derek did not move. He made the cashier handle it alone. He was the manager, but he was not managing. He was just standing there doing nothing. A family walked up to the counter to pick up their order. The father opened the bag and looked inside. He pulled out a sandwich and checked it. Then his face changed. He looked annoyed. "Excuse me," the father said to the cashier. "This is wrong. I ordered no pickles." The cashier looked at Derek. Derek walked over slowly like he was being bothered. "What's the problem?" Derek asked. "I ordered no pickles on this sandwich," the father said. "But it has pickles." Derek barely looked at the sandwich. "Just pick them off." The father looked shocked. "Pick them off? I paid for it the way I wanted it. Can you remake it?" Derek sighed loudly. "We're busy. Just pick off what you don't like." The father looked like he wanted to argue, but his children were getting restless. His wife touched his arm and shook her head. The father decided not to fight. He took his food and walked away, but Sarah could see he was unhappy. She could see his wife was embarrassed. They sat at a table and the father picked the pickles off his sandwich with his fingers. Sarah pulled out her phone again. She opened the camera app. She made sure the sound was off. Then she took a picture of her cold food. She took pictures from different angles. She took a picture showing the receipt with the timestamp. She took a picture showing how long ago she had ordered. This was evidence. Then she did something else. She opened her notes app and started writing. She wrote down everything that had happened. She wrote the time she ordered, the time she got her food, the temperature of the food, what Derek said, how he acted. She wrote down everything she could remember. Details were important in investigations. You had to document everything. She looked at the business license on the wall. Every restaurant had to display one. It was the law. She zoomed in with her camera and took a picture of it. The license showed the restaurant name, the address, and the owner's name. The owner was listed as Robert Chen. She wrote that name in her notes. Sarah opened her laptop. She had brought it from her car earlier because she thought she might work during lunch. Now she was glad she had it. She connected to the restaurant's free Wi-Fi and started searching. She typed Robert Chen's name and the restaurant franchise into the search engine. Results came up immediately. Robert Chen owned not just this location, but 5 locations across the city. Sarah clicked on the first result. It was a business registry website. She read the information carefully. Then she searched for reviews of all 5 locations. She spent 10 minutes reading customer reviews on different websites. A pattern started to appear. Many customers complained about cold food. Many complained about rude managers. Many complained about wrong orders and refusals to fix them. The same problems at different locations. This was not just one bad restaurant. This was a systematic problem. Sarah searched for news articles about Robert Chen. She found 2. One was from 8 months ago. It was about a lawsuit filed by 3 former employees. They claimed they were not paid for overtime work. They claimed they were forced to work off the clock. They claimed they were threatened if they complained. The lawsuit was still ongoing. The second article was from 5 months ago. Another lawsuit, this time from a former manager who claimed wrongful termination. The manager said he was fired for reporting health code violations to his supervisors. He said Robert Chen told him to ignore the violations because fixing them would cost money. Sarah sat back in her booth. This was bigger than she thought. Much bigger. Robert Chen was not just a careless owner. He appeared to be someone who knew about problems and chose to ignore them. Someone who put profits over safety. Someone who treated employees badly. She looked around the restaurant again. She counted 6 employees working. They all looked tired. They all looked stressed. None of them looked happy. She watched them work and started noticing more things. She saw one employee take money from a customer at the register. Then, without washing his hands, he went straight to the kitchen and started handling food. No hand washing. That was a health code violation. Sarah took a note. She saw food sitting in containers under heat lamps. She could not tell how long it had been there, but it looked old. The fries looked soggy. The burger patties looked dry. Food had temperature rules. Hot food had to stay hot. If it sat too long, bacteria could grow. That was dangerous. That was another violation. She saw an employee drop a piece of equipment on the floor. The employee picked it up and put it right back on the counter without cleaning it. Floor to food surface with no cleaning. Another violation. Sarah wrote everything down. She took pictures when she could do it without being obvious. She was building a case. This was what she did for a living. She gathered evidence. She documented problems. She built cases that would hold up in court or in official investigations. After 30 minutes of watching and documenting, Sarah made another phone call. This time she called the restaurant's corporate headquarters. These were franchises, which meant there was a main company that owned the brand. That company had rules that franchise owners had to follow. "Thank you for calling Fast Bite corporate offices." A cheerful woman answered. "How can I help you?" "I need to speak with your compliance department," Sarah said in her professional voice. "May I ask what this is regarding?" The woman asked. "I'm Detective Sarah Kim with the City Police Department. I need to file a complaint about one of your franchise locations. It involves health code violations and possible consumer fraud." The woman's tone changed immediately. "One moment, Detective. Let me transfer you right away." Sarah waited. She knew using her title would get attention. Companies took law enforcement seriously. After a minute, a man answered. "This is David Park, head of franchise compliance," the man said. "I understand you have a concern about one of our locations?" Sarah explained everything. She told him about the cold food, about Derek's behavior, about the health violations she had witnessed, about the pattern of complaints across all 5 locations owned by Robert Chen, about the lawsuits. She spoke clearly and calmly. She provided specific details and dates. David Park listened without interrupting. When Sarah finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Detective Kim, I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention," he said. His voice was serious now. "What you're describing is extremely concerning. These franchises represent our brand, and this behavior is absolutely not acceptable." "What will you do?" Sarah asked. "I'm going to start an immediate investigation," David said. "I'll send an inspector to that location today. I'm also going to review all 5 of Robert Chen's locations. If what you're saying is accurate and I have no reason to doubt you, then Mr. Chen may lose his franchise rights." "How long will that take?" Sarah asked. "The initial inspection can happen within hours," David said. "The full investigation might take weeks. But I promise you we will take this seriously. Can I get your contact information in case we need to follow up?" Sarah gave him her work email and badge number. David thanked her again and promised to update her. When she hung up, Sarah felt satisfied. Corporate would investigate. That was good. But she was not done yet. She made another call. This time to a friend who worked at the local newspaper. The woman's name was Jessica Park. She worked in the consumer protection section. She did stories about businesses that cheated or mistreated customers. Sarah had worked with her before on other cases. "Sarah," Jessica answered. "Long time no talk." "What's up?" "I have a story for you," Sarah said. "It's about a restaurant chain that's serving cold food, violating health codes, and mistreating employees." Jessica became very interested. "Tell me more." Sarah explained everything again. Jessica asked questions. She asked for the restaurant name, the owner's name, the location. She asked if Sarah had proof. Sarah told her about the pictures, the notes, the complaints, the lawsuits. "This is good," Jessica said. "Can I send a camera crew?" "Yes," Sarah said. "But give it an hour or 2. Other things are happening first," Jessica agreed. They talked for a few more minutes about details. Then Sarah hung up. She sat in the booth and thought. She had made 4 calls now. Health Department, Labor Board, Corporate Headquarters, News Reporter. Each call was a domino, and when all the dominoes fell, they would fall on Derek and Robert Chen. But Sarah had one more idea. One more call to make. This one was bigger than the others. She pulled up a contact in her phone. It was a number for the FBI field office. She knew an agent there who worked in white-collar crime. His name was Agent Michael Lee. Sarah called the number. Sarah stood at the counter with her tray of cold food. The same cashier was there, still looking at her phone. Sarah waited patiently for the girl to notice her. After a few seconds, the cashier looked up. She recognized Sarah from a few minutes ago. Her expression did not change. She looked bored and annoyed. "Yes?" the cashier said. "Hi," Sarah said with a polite smile. "I'm sorry to bother you, but my food is cold. The burger is cold all the way through. The fries are soggy. I think it sat under the heat lamp too long after you made it." The cashier stared at her for a moment. Then she shrugged. Her shoulders went up and down. That was her entire response. Just a shrug. "It was hot when we made it," the cashier said. Her voice was flat and uncaring. Sarah kept her smile. She had dealt with difficult people before. She knew how to stay calm. "I understand," she said. "But it's cold now. Could I please get a fresh meal? Or maybe a refund?" The cashier let out a long, loud sigh. She rolled her eyes. She acted like Sarah was asking for something impossible, like Sarah was being unreasonable. The cashier turned her head toward the back. "Derek!" she shouted. "Manager!" Sarah waited. She could hear movement in the back office area. After a moment, a man came out. He was wearing the same uniform as the other workers, but his shirt had a name tag that said Manager. His name tag said Derek. He looked like he was in his late 20s. His uniform shirt was wrinkled and had a small stain on it. His hair looked messy. He walked toward the counter with a look of annoyance on his face. "What?" Derek said to the cashier. He did not look at Sarah yet. The cashier pointed at Sarah. "She says her food is cold." Derek finally looked at Sarah. He looked her up and down. His expression was not friendly. He looked at her like she was wasting his time. He walked to the counter and looked at the tray. "Which one?" he asked. "The burger," Sarah said calmly. "And the fries. Everything is cold." Derek reached over and picked up the burger. He touched it with his fingers. He held it for maybe 2 seconds. Then he put it back down on the tray. "Feels fine to me," he said. Sarah felt a flash of surprise. She had not expected him to lie. The burger was clearly cold. Anyone who touched it would know. "Sir, the meat is cold all the way through," Sarah explained. She kept her voice calm and polite. "I think it was made a while ago and sat under the heat lamp. It happens sometimes when restaurants are busy. I'm just asking for a fresh one." Derek crossed his arms over his chest. "Lady, our kitchen doesn't make mistakes. The food was hot when we made it. If it's cold now, it's because you took too long to eat it." Sarah had not even taken a bite except to test it. She had only been sitting down for a few minutes. His logic made no sense. But she could see he was not interested in logic. He was interested in not admitting there was a problem. "I didn't eat slowly," Sarah said. Her voice was still calm but firmer now. "The food was already cold when I got it. My number sat on the counter for several minutes before anyone gave it to me." Derek's face turned slightly red. "Are you calling me a liar?" His voice was getting louder. Other customers were starting to look at them. "No," Sarah said evenly. "I'm just explaining what happened. I would like either fresh food or a refund, please." Derek laughed. It was not a friendly laugh. It was a mean laugh. "We don't do refunds for customer complaints. You got your food. That's it." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. She took a slow breath. In her line of work, she had learned to control her emotions. She had been trained to stay calm in difficult situations. She had faced criminals and dangerous people. She could handle a rude fast food manager. "Can I speak to the owner, please?" Sarah asked. "Or the district manager?" Derek's laugh got louder. Some of the kitchen workers were watching now. The cashier was smirking. Derek seemed to be enjoying this. "They'll tell you the same thing I am," Derek said. He was almost shouting now. "There's nothing wrong with your food. This is what you ordered. This is what you got. End of story." "I'd still like their contact information," Sarah said. She pulled out her phone. "What's the owner's name?" Derek's expression changed. He looked suspicious now. "Why do you need that?" Because I'm not satisfied with your response, Sarah said simply. I have a right to contact the owner of this franchise. Derek shook his head. Customers don't get that information. It's private. Sarah knew this was not true. Franchise information was public. Business licenses had owner names on them. But she did not argue. She just looked at Derek calmly. What's your full name? She asked. Derek, it's on my name tag, he said with attitude. Your last name? Sarah asked. You don't need my last name, Derek said. He was getting angry now. Look, lady, I don't know what your problem is, but you need to leave. You got your food. We're done here. Sarah noticed several things happening at once. Other customers were definitely watching now. Two people had their phones out. They were recording the conversation. One construction worker was shaking his head at Derek's behavior. One of the businesswomen looked disgusted. Even some of the kitchen workers looked uncomfortable with how Derek was acting. Sarah made one more attempt. Sir, I'm asking one more time. I paid for hot food. The food is cold. I would like either a fresh meal or a refund. That's a reasonable request. Derek leaned forward on the counter. His face was very red now. And I'm telling you one more time, we don't give refunds. You got what you paid for. Now step aside. There are other customers waiting. Sarah looked behind her. There were no other customers waiting. The line was empty. Derek was lying again. The cashier giggled. She thought this was funny. She was enjoying watching her manager be rude to a customer. Some of the kitchen workers looked away. They seemed embarrassed, but nobody said anything. Nobody stood up to Derek. Sarah looked at Derek for a long moment. She did not say anything. She just studied his face. She had interviewed hundreds of people in her career. She had learned to read people, and what she saw in Derek's face was not just rudeness. She saw someone who did this often, someone who treated customers badly because he could, someone who thought he had power and enjoyed using it. Okay, Sarah said quietly. She picked up her tray with the cold food. Thank you for your time. Derek looked surprised. He had probably expected her to yell or make a scene, but Sarah just took her tray and walked back to her booth. Derek watched her go. Then he turned to the cashier and said something. They both laughed. The cashier went back to looking at her phone. Sarah sat down in her booth. She placed the tray of cold food on the table. She pulled out her phone. But she was not calling to complain to a customer service number. She was not leaving a bad review online. She was doing something completely different. Sarah had been a detective for 8 years. Before that, she had been a patrol officer for 4 years. She had 12 years of training in how to investigate problems. She had 12 years of experience in finding the truth. She had 12 years of learning how to gather evidence and build cases. And right now, sitting in this booth with her cold burger, something in her mind switched. She was not just an angry customer anymore. She was a detective, and Derek had just made a very big mistake. He'd been rude to the wrong person. Sarah opened her phone and went to her contacts. She scrolled through names until she found what she was looking for. She pressed the call button and waited. Someone answered after 2 rings. City Health Department, Inspection Division, a woman's voice said. Hello, Sarah said in a professional voice. My name is Detective Sarah Kim, badge number 4729. I'm calling to inquire about the inspection history of a restaurant location. She heard the woman on the phone become more attentive. Yes, detective. Which location? Sarah looked at the wall near the kitchen. Every restaurant had to display their business license and health inspection scores. She could see them from where she sat. She read the address to the woman on the phone. One moment, the woman said. Sarah could hear typing on a keyboard. Yes, I have that location in our system. What would you like to know? What's their inspection history? Sarah asked. Any violations in the past year? More typing. Then the woman spoke. They've had 3 inspections in the past 12 months. They received violations on temperature control in 2 of those inspections, both times for keeping food in the danger zone too long. They were given warnings and corrected the violations. Sarah felt something click in her mind. Temperature control problems. That explained the cold food. But it also meant this was a pattern, not just a one-time mistake. Were the violations corrected properly? Sarah asked. According to our records, yes, the woman said. But they were borderline on the follow-up inspection. The inspector noted that management seemed resistant to feedback. Sarah thanked the woman and ended the call. She sat back in the booth and thought. temperature control violations, resistant management, a manager who refused to acknowledge problems. This was adding up to something bigger than just cold food. She made another call, this time to the State Labor Board. She identified herself again and asked about complaint records for the restaurant. The person on the phone put her on hold. After 3 minutes, they came back. "We have 2 formal complaints filed in the past 8 months," the person said, "both from former employees. One about unpaid overtime, one about hostile work environment. Both are still under investigation." Sarah thanked them and hung up. She looked at Derek. Detective Sarah Kim sat in her car outside a busy fast food restaurant. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. She had been working since 6 in the morning. Her back hurt from sitting in the car for so long. Her eyes felt tired from watching a building across town for the past 4 hours. She was hungry, very hungry. Sarah was an undercover detective. She worked in the financial crimes unit. For the past 3 years, she had been catching people who stole money and cheated others. Today she was watching a man who was suspected of stealing from his company. But right now it was her lunch break. She had 1 hour to eat and rest before going back to work. She looked at the restaurant in front of her. It was a popular burger place. She had driven past it many times but never stopped. The building was red and yellow with big windows. Through the windows she could see people sitting at tables and standing in line. The parking lot was half full. It looked like a normal busy lunchtime. Sarah got out of her car. She stretched her arms and rolled her shoulders. Sitting in a car for hours made her body stiff. She walked toward the restaurant entrance. The sun was bright and warm on her face. She could smell French fries and grilled meat. Her stomach made a noise. She smiled. She really needed this break. When she pushed open the glass door, cool air from the air conditioning hit her. The restaurant was louder than it looked from outside. Children were talking and laughing. A baby was crying in one corner. The sound of the fryers and kitchen equipment mixed with music playing from speakers. Sarah stood in line behind 3 other people. She looked around the restaurant while she waited. The inside was clean but old. The floor tiles were faded. Some of the booth seats had tape covering tears in the plastic. The walls had pictures of burgers and happy families eating together. There were about 15 tables. Most of them had people sitting at them. She saw construction workers in dirty clothes eating burgers. She saw 2 women in business suits sharing fries and talking. She saw a family with 3 young children. Everyone seemed normal. Everyone seemed busy with their own lives. Sarah reached the counter. A young woman stood behind the register. She looked about 19 or 20 years old. She had her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her uniform shirt looked wrinkled. She was looking down at her phone, which she had placed next to the register. She did not look up when Sarah stepped forward. Sarah waited a moment. The cashier kept looking at her phone. Sarah cleared her throat softly. The cashier finally looked up. She did not smile. She did not say hello. She just stared at Sarah with a blank expression. "Hi," Sarah said with a friendly smile. "Can I get the premium burger meal with a cola?" The cashier tapped the screen without saying anything. "Size?" she asked in a flat voice. "Medium, please," Sarah said. The cashier tapped more buttons. $12.47, she said. She held out her hand for payment. Sarah handed her a $20 bill. The cashier took it, put it in the register, and counted out the change. She dropped the coins and bills into Sarah's hand without making eye contact. Then she tore off a receipt with a number on it and pushed it across the counter. "Number 63, the cashier said. Then she looked back down at her phone. Sarah took the receipt and the change. "Thank you," she said. The cashier did not respond. She was already looking at her phone again, scrolling through something. Sarah walked away from the counter. She had worked with all kinds of people in her job. She had learned not to judge too quickly. Maybe the cashier was having a bad day. Maybe she had problems at home. Sarah decided not to think about it. She just wanted to eat and rest. She chose a booth in the corner. It gave her a view of the entire restaurant and the front entrance. This was a habit from her training. Even when she was off duty, she liked to know what was happening around her. She liked to see who came in and who went out. She sat down and placed her receipt on the table. Number 63. She looked at the counter where workers would call out numbers when orders were ready. Sarah watched the restaurant while she waited. She saw the kitchen workers moving behind the counter. They looked busy and stressed. One young man was putting fries into paper containers. A woman was wrapping burgers. Another worker was filling drink cups. They all moved quickly, but their faces looked tired. None of them were smiling or talking to each other. They just worked in silence. She looked at the other customers. Most people seemed happy with their food. The construction workers were eating and laughing together. The businesswomen were having a serious conversation. The family with children seemed content, though the parents looked exhausted from managing 3 young kids. Everything seemed normal. Sarah checked her watch. 5 minutes had passed since she ordered. She was not worried. She knew fast food could take time when the restaurant was busy. She pulled out her phone and checked her work emails. Nothing urgent. She put the phone away and waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 12 minutes. Sarah noticed other people who had ordered after her were getting their food. Number 64 was called. Then 65. Then 66. Her number still had not been called. She watched the counter more carefully now. Something was wrong with the system. Maybe they forgot her order. 15 minutes passed. Sarah was definitely sure something was wrong now. She stood up and walked toward the counter. She could see her receipt number had been placed on a tray with a bag and a drink. It was sitting under a heat lamp on the counter. The food had been ready for a while, but nobody had called her number. She waited behind 2 other customers who were ordering. When it was her turn, she stepped forward. The same cashier was still there, still looking at her phone between customers. "Excuse me," Sarah said politely. "I'm number 63. I think my order has been sitting there for a while." The cashier looked at the counter. She saw the tray with Sarah's number. Without saying anything, she reached over and slid the tray across the counter towards Sarah. "Here," the cashier said. Then she looked back at her phone. Sarah took the tray. She looked at the food. The bag looked fine from the outside. The drink cup was sweating with condensation. She took the tray back to her booth and sat down. She opened the bag. The smell that came out was not good. It did not smell like fresh hot food. She pulled out the burger and unwrapped it. The bun was soft and soggy. She touched the meat patty. It was cold. Not just warm or lukewarm. It was cold like it had been sitting in a refrigerator. Sarah frowned. She picked up a French fry. It was limp and soggy. The outside was greasy but not crispy. These fries had definitely been sitting out for a long time. She took the lid off her drink and took a sip. The cola was flat. There was almost no carbonation left. She put everything back in the bag. This was not acceptable. She had paid almost $13 for this meal. She had waited 15 minutes. And the food was completely cold. She was not an angry person. She did not like to make scenes or cause trouble. But this was not right. She deserved hot food. That was the basic promise of a restaurant. Sarah picked up the tray with all the cold food. She stood up and walked back to the counter. She still felt calm. She would simply explain the problem. They would make her a fresh meal. Everything would be fine. She had no idea that this simple complaint was about to change everything. She had no idea that her training as a detective would turn a cold burger into something much bigger. She just wanted hot food. That was all. Just hot food.